So when we look at our children's developmental stages, and if you have more than one child, it's important to look at where they are at from a social, emotional and a behavioural point of view. And I'm going to take you through the different stages varying on ages. So a 13-month-old, so just turned 1 to 18 months, this is often the time when they seek out the parent to help them problem solve. So if there's a spilt drink on the floor, they'll come tugging at our leg to bring us to where it is, to show us, to ask us, what do we do now? They start to show signs of compliance, and they're also showing signs of empathy, which you think is quite unusual for a small child, but it isn't. It can be quite typical at this stage, and this begins their journey of starting to see how other people think and feel. Also, I suppose from the point of view of older siblings versus pals, they're not likely to get drawn towards other children to play with them. They will parallel play, so they will play kind of in their company. But their preference, if anything, would be to play with their older siblings. And that's quite common if, obviously, they're part of an older group within the family. And so that's their natural draw. 18 to 24 months, the child begins to start to show emotions like embarrassment. So, their face can often kind of go red and fill up with that embarrassment or feeling of guilt if they know they've gotten in trouble. So again, they're becoming that little bit more conscious of themselves and those around them. As well as that, you might start to see signs of when they have more preference to dad as opposed to mum, although they will get quite upset when separated from mum. So showing signs of that kind of separation anxiety. And often what we see is that little girls fall completely head over heels in love with their daddies, and like that, little boys fall in love with their mums. And there's that unconditional love that we see and we experience, which is pretty special. 2 to 3 year olds, this is often where it kicks off big time, and our poor little toddlers get a right old reputation for themselves. But they do start to show that understanding of between what's right and wrong, what's intentional and unintentional behaviour, those feelings of happy, sad, angry, upset. Their world pretty much revolves around them. So they've great difficulty sharing, and often when parents talk to me about how their child really struggles to share, and they are in this age bracket of young toddler age, they really don't know how to. So it's important that we create or set an expectation of knowing that, and that will come in time, typically from 3.5. But typical behaviours for a child of this age would be hitting, kicking, biting, pulling hair, banging doors, throwing themselves on the floor, holding their breath till their face goes blue, banging their head off surfaces. These are all very normal behaviours that can scare us and can really get us engaged and respond to it, obviously because we want our children to be safe and okay. But these are all behaviours that are quite typical, because our children get quite frustrated when they don't get their own way. Maybe they are looking for something that they can't have, which is in similar lines to that. They get frustrated when change occurs, when maybe their language hasn't developed well enough yet and they can't articulate with us what the problem is. They just can't express themselves, and they're still, remember, extremely young to be able to tell us exactly how they're feeling. And often when we ask what's wrong or how are you feeling, they just don't know. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that later on. But this is quite a crucial time for our children, because they, in a way, are probably the most vocal and most expressive, but they struggle with telling us how they feel, and therefore we can often get frustrated because we don't know the answer or we can't give them the answer. So there's a lot that we can do to help them, again, which I'll elaborate further on down the line. But routine plays a big part for for our children, and during this period of time in particular, they thrive in routine. They love to know what's going on, and they cope a lot better when there's a structure, when there's a routine or rhythm in our days, and particularly during this period of time where there is a lot of unpredictability. We want to start creating some kind of a norm, certainly over the next number of weeks, while we are all restricted to a degree. But yeah, it's just to keep that in mind. What else have we got? 4 to 5 year olds. This is where they become quite competitive, and they insist on rules. They prefer girls versus boys toys, so they're more mindful of that. And it's often when you start to see their self-esteem really build and progress and flourish. So and at that time, it's where they're preschool. They're starting to adapt to being in bigger numbers, whether it is that they're in Montessori, play school, whether they're going through their ECI years. But they're starting to learn about tabletop activities, establishing that sharing relationship with their with their peers. So it is again a very special time for preschoolers, and again they're preparing for that school age. 5 to 6 then, this is where they start to have that ability to manage their feelings more effectively. So they mightn't be as quick to come looking for the adult to solve the problem, or manage maybe the situation that they're currently having with their peers. Again, this is this is where they start their primary school years, and a lot is changing. So they're having to adapt to a lot during this time. So you might find that your child will struggle with that settling in period as they start school. And for many of us now, that is going to be, this September. But it's a time for adapting, and again, being with that larger group, and maybe not having the comfort of being in a preschool setting. But certainly, again, there's a lot going on for our children that are starting school, at that time. 6 to 7. 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9. These are our children's middle years, and this is where friendship plays a significant part. They really have that want to fit in with their peers, to be accepted by them. And often with parents, they'll ask me, you know what, my child doesn't have that friend that they have connected with, or that circle of peers, and is this okay? And I would say to the parent that this is absolutely fine. Usually it's around age 9 that our children will start to show an interest in establishing the more grounded relationships, that they're drawn to the same people, and they establish not necessarily the friendships for life, but certainly for the coming school years. At the same time, they may not, and they might be happy to potter about with different friendships. And at that point, for a lot of our children, they are maybe in extracurricular activities like sports, like dance, arts and crafts, horse riding, swimming. Some of our group activities, and other are independent activities, and that's often where our children will be drawn to children outside of the school setting, because they're mixing with children that are more they have similar interests in common. So I wouldn't worry if your child is starting to show that they don't have one best friend, because some children are very confident and happy and content just pottering about among various peers within their peer group or in their class setting. So at this point, kind of age 9, they are establishing what feels comfortable to them. And if you start to see that you're concerned about your child's self-esteem, just kind of look at what is it that they're excelling in, what is it, are they holding any passion, is there anything in particular that they love, and look at the options of them connecting to that club or group, because that's often where they will find someone that that they like, that can connect with.